Let me ask you something. Are you still watching your tests log in through the UI? Typing the username, then the password, clicking that button over and over and over again? Hey, if you are, you're definitely not alone. But today, we're going to look at a much smarter way to handle logins, a technique that will completely change the game for your test suite speed and, just as importantly, its reliability. Think about it. Every single time a test runs, that UI login costs you precious seconds. 5, 10, maybe even more. Now, that might not sound like a lot for one test, but what about a suite of 100 tests? Suddenly, you're not wasting seconds. You're wasting minutes, maybe even hours. And let's be honest, it's usually the flakiest part of the whole test, right? Causing random failures that have absolutely nothing to do with the features you're actually trying to test. There has to be a better way. And of course there is. This slide really breaks it down. On one hand, you have the old way. It's slow, it's flaky, and it's just a massive time sink. But on the other hand, we have the smart way. Using a direct API login is instant, it's rock solid, and it saves you hours of execution time. It's a no-brainer. Okay, so let's get into the secret sauce. To really understand this, I want you to picture something we've all done, going to a theme park. The traditional UI login? That's you, standing in that ridiculously long, slow-moving line just to get into the park. You're just watching everyone go through the turnstiles one by one. It's a necessary step, sure, but it's not the fun part. You're just waiting to get to the real attractions, which, for us, are our actual tests. Now, in API login, that's your express pass. You get to just stroll right past that massive queue, scan your pass, and boom, you are instantly inside, ready to hit the rides. You get to bypass the entire wait and get straight to what you came for. That is the kind of power we're about to bring to our test suites. This whole strategy has a technical name you should probably know: authentication bypass. I know, it sounds a little fancy, but all it really means is that we are strategically skipping those slow, boring UI steps and using a much faster direct API call instead. We are cutting the line, and we're doing it on purpose. So why does this matter so much? One word: speed. We are talking about logins that take mere milliseconds instead of multiple, painful seconds. When you multiply that tiny saving across hundreds of tests, the impact is just enormous. Your future self, and trust me, your project manager, will thank you. So this technique really changes everything for 3 main reasons. First, you get drastic speed. We're talking real measurable hours saved that make your development feedback loop incredibly tight. Second, you get rock-solid stability. APIs are just way less brittle than UI elements, so you eliminate a huge source of those random, annoying test failures. And third, and this part is absolutely crucial, you get all of this without sacrificing Playwright's core promise of perfect test isolation. Every test still runs in its own clean, independent browser context. All right, so you get the why. Now let's dig into the how. We're going to look at the code to make this happen. And seriously, you've got this. It's way simpler than you probably think. The whole process really just boils down to this simple 3-step plan. First, we request access by sending our login info directly to an API. Second, we save the authenticated session that the server sends back. We just save it to a file. And third, we tell all of our tests to reuse that file to start in a logged-in state. Request, save, reuse. That's the whole mantra. So how do we actually make that request? Well, we use a super powerful Playwright feature called APIRequestContext. You can think of this as your own personal direct line to the application's backend, completely skipping the browser UI. It's our secret weapon for getting this done. And here it is in action. In a setup file, we use request.post to hit our login endpoint with our credentials. Super simple. Once that's successful, we make one other critical call: request.storageState. This one command is like magic. It saves everything we need: cookies, local storage tokens, the whole shebang, into a single JSON file. That's it. Login complete, no UI involved. And that storage state file we just created? That is our golden ticket. Remember the theme park analogy? This file is our saved express pass. It contains all the proof the browser needs to tell the server, hey, don't worry about me, I am already authenticated. And this right here, this is the beautiful payoff. Look at this test file. It's so clean. Notice what's missing? There are no login steps at all. We just go directly to a page that requires a login, like a dashboard, and we immediately start our assertions. The storage state that we set up in our config file tells Playwright to handle the login for us automatically, behind the scenes, before the test even starts. Okay, now here is an insider tip that top engineers absolutely swear by. You don't want to run this API login before every single test. That's still inefficient. Instead, you put this logic into what's called a setup project. This tells Playwright to run that API login just once, at the very beginning of your entire test run. It creates that auth file, and then all the other tests can just use it. It's maximum efficiency. All right, this technique is incredibly powerful, but it's also pretty easy to stumble when you're just starting out. So let's quickly cover the 2 rookie mistakes that pretty much everyone makes, just so you can sidestep them completely. The first, and by far the most critical mistake, is committing your authentication file to source control. Seriously, do not do this. This file contains sensitive session tokens that could let someone impersonate a user. You absolutely do not want that in your Git history. The fix is simple and immediate. Add your auth directory to your .gitignore file. Do this before you even write a single line of code. It's a non-negotiable security step. The second common trap is just getting the API request wrong. Maybe you used the wrong endpoint, or you're sending the data in the wrong format. Don't guess. The fix is your browser's best friend, the DevTools. Just do a real login through the UI one time, open the network tab, find that login request, and then just copy the exact URL and the payload. It's the perfect blueprint, and it'll save you a ton of headaches. So let's wrap this up. By moving your authentication from the slow, clunky UI and into the fast, reliable API layer, you've basically just given yourself a new testing superpower. You are now equipped to build tests that are orders of magnitude faster and more reliable. So if you only remember 3 things from all this, let it be these. 1. Bypass the UI. Use APIRequestContext for direct fast logins. 2. Save the state. Use request.statestorage to save that authenticated session into a file. And 3. Reuse everywhere. Configure your test to use that state file for instant logins while keeping them perfectly isolated. And I'm serious about this. Master this one technique, and you will immediately put yourself ahead of the curve. This is a hallmark of a truly efficient, modern automation engineer. You master this, and you're ahead of 80% of your peers. It's simply the smart way to test.